Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Property Zone Live again. This is Sean Lee, and today we'll be talking about Korea property market. Now, Korea is a country that is so familiar to many of us, whether it's their pop bands, their Korean drama, Korean BBQ, the culture is everywhere. But at the same time, it's still a little bit distant from us, right? Because the language is totally different, because the culture in a way is totally different. Now, today I'm just going to bring you to Korea and take a look at what is going on in Korea property market. Okay. Now, before I kickstart, I just want to ask you two questions. If you are a landlord, okay, if you are a landlord and you own a property worth 1 million, okay, now the option is given to you. Now you'll be collecting a deposit. A deposit. You want to rent out, you collect a deposit from the tenant worth 700,000. You own a property 1 million, you collect a deposit for 700,000. But you keep the money for 2 years. You won't get any rental, but you can use the 700,000 for 2 years. And upon the maturity of the lease, you need to return 700,000. If you are owner, would you say yes to this proposal? Now, question number two, if you are the tenant, you want to rent a property worth 1 million. Now, instead of the conventional way of paying 2,500, 3,000, or even more for the next 2 years every month, you are given the options, right? You can either use your own money or you can take a loan from the bank up to 700,000 of the property value. All right, 70%, which is 700,000. Keep lending to basically make a deposit to the landlord. But during the 2 years time, you don't have to pay a single cent of rental. Upon 2 years, you get back every single cent. Now, you can even buy an insurance for that, just in case the landlord not able to pay you back, you can actually claim the 700,000 from the insurance company. Now, if you are the tenant, would you say yes? So these are the one, whether you are a tenant or you are the landlord, the option is presented to you. And today, this is what is going on in Korea market. So I have done up some slide, interesting, and let you know what's going on in Korea. All right, I'm just gonna bring my slide out and bring you to Korea. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, I hope everyone can see my slide. So basically, to let you have a glimpse, a quick look at what is going on in Korean property market from the year of 2012 all the way to current situation. Now, as you can see, even though we might not be the expert in reading graph, reading chart, but I think most of us can see that Korean property market are not doing well. You can see a steep decline in terms of the housing market prices. Another thing to take a look at is basically a HPI, housing property market index, based on year-on-year basis. For example, if you look at January 2022, the property has appreciated 11% over the last 1 year, which is January 2021. But things has take a quick turn. As you can see, once we move on to and towards the end of 2022, they are actually have showing the sign of negative return. It means property prices are start going down year-on-year basis. Now, to putting in perspective, this year, in the year of 2023, overall, Korean property market has dropped about 18.6%. Now we're only coming to the fourth month. So basically, within 3 months, property prices has come down quite a fair bit, all right? I'm not even talking about yearly figure. I'm just talking about for first 3 months. From the beginning of the year or end of last year until end of March, property prices has dropped 18.6%. So this is what is reflecting in the secondary market. On the primary market wise, I think if you are in developer shoes, you will be panicking also. So what a lot of developers are doing now in order to encourage and motivate buyers to buy their house, they even give gold Gold is very valuable now. Now it's more than $2,000 per ounce international prices. And they even give out Mercedes-Benz just to make sure they can clear the stock on time. Okay. Now, if you type in this word, John say it's basically a mechanism. I think that's quite unique to Korea. And I think most of Malaysian like you and me have not heard about it before. Okay. So basically, how it works is what I explained at the beginning. So there's basically these things that property prices in Korea, particularly Seoul, is very, very expensive. Okay, at one point of time, it's actually the second most expensive city in the world for property prices. So because of high property prices and also the bank reluctance to lend money to the new workers, the youngster who actually just maybe just fresh graduate, only few years into the workforce, right? They a bit reluctant. They feel the risk of lending to the young people versus the high property prices, the risk is high. So they are not willing to lend the money for the new, for the youngster to purchase house. So they come up with this Johnson scheme in a way the tenant can put up a deposit typically worth as much as 70%. So 1 million, you pay a 700,000 deposit, not your usual 2+1 or a 3.5 months kind of deposit. I'm talking about 70% of the property value. Okay, then without having to pay the rent for free until the landlord returns the full amount. Interesting, right? Okay, I know at this moment of time, so many of you, including myself, we couldn't believe it. There are so many questions in our mind. I'll go through those questions step by step with you. Okay, so tenant no need to pay rental for 2 years. Give 50 to 70% of the house value to owner as deposit. You take back every single cent once the tenancy agreement matured. Okay, tenant, no, for extra protection because you're giving a big sum of amount to the owner. You can buy insurance in case the owner could not pay back that time. Now, I'm sure you have questions just like I did. Okay, the number one question, the golden questions is, if the tenant can get 70% loan of the house value, why don't they just buy the house? Okay, it actually comes down to the banking side, the financing side. From the bank, they are not willing to lend the money, okay, betting on the house buyer, especially the younger one who buy the house, and they will be able to service the installment every month. They just don't believe the thing is too risky. Instead, they are willing to come up with the loan and give to these people as a tenant and pay the deposit. So the money is in the hand of the landlord. So maybe to the bank's perspective, landlord is somebody who have made it there. Someone who has actually have a record of owning a house, servicing their record nicely. So this is something, come back to the question, why rent when you can buy? But in this case, the situation in Korea is different. I think the financing to buy a house is very challenging, very difficult, but you will be able to come up with your own money as a tenant, plus a loan from the bank to put down as a deposit as much as 70% of the house value. That is basically the picture behind it. Second question is, if you are the landlord, why should I rent out my house for free? I take 700,000, I give 700,000 back, but during these 2 years, I have no income. So basically, why landlord like to do this, especially people who can think about time value of money, they can actually have put in a good return ROI of the 700,000 they collected from tenant. Investment, business, even to put into the safest form of fixed deposit, there's still a return on the money. Basically, you can use the free money up to 70% of your house for 2 years. So tenant is happy, owner is happy, but most of the time, it actually have triggered a phenomenon, right? Some people will do investment, some people will do business, some people maybe put in the fixed deposit or other saving account that give them returns. But quite a number of people that actually use this money to buy few more houses. Because I already have 700,000, I can probably put down 150,000 or even a little bit more as a down payment to buy 3, maybe 4 more houses. So when I bought the house, in return, when I rent out, I collect another 70% as deposit for all the houses I own. And the things keep going. Okay? Now, since the landlord and tenants are happy, one get to use the free money for 2 years, the other one basically put down a deposit. They don't have to pay a renter for 2 years. Okay? So both of them are happy. Any risk to it? Actually, the first thing come to my mind is if I'm the bank, I might be overgearing. Yes, the bank is overgearing, overlending in a sense. The house is worth 1 million. Maybe the landlord itself already have a mortgage of 800,000 for their 1 million house, because maybe not all landlords are buying the house for with cash, right? He took a loan of 800,000 for the $1 million house. And at the same time, me as a bank, I lend out another 700,000 to the tenants to use as a deposit to pay back, as a deposit to pay to the owner. So ultimately, I'm actually lending out 1.5 million in total for a 1 million ringgit worth of house. So now it sounds like a house of cards. It sounds like something is brewing. Okay, this is the one. Okay, just put down in sentence. The landlord accepts 700,000 deposit to his 1 million ringgit house, $1 million house. We use dollar cents. So he used the 700,000 as a deposit to buy 4 more houses, right? Maybe 150,000 as a deposit. So then he take another 2.8 million as deposit from the 4 additional houses. Then the story goes on. So because of this scheme, all right, because of things, some people may find a loophole. One working class guy, okay, one working class guy, because he own a house from the beginning, in 3 years' time, is able to finance and purchase 280 houses in 3 years. I'm sure most of us have heard of compressed loan, buy 4 houses at one time in a year, buy 7 houses in a year, but 280 houses in 3 years. This is something that beyond our wildest imagination, and it's happening in Korea, and he's not the sole example. All right. So what is happening now because of the Korean property prices are start crashing? Imagine if you are the one who's holding, don't even talk about 280 houses. Imagine you are the one who's holding 50, 80 houses at one time, and you see your house value drop by 18% in 3 months. Can you imagine the stress you're going on? So normal response is, I want to liquidate my portfolio. I want to liquidate my position. I want to sell houses even as a loss because I just have too much on my plate, right? So overextended landlord, overgearing, over leveraging landlords are failing to return the deposit, hitting younger tenants, especially hard, and threatening to undermine the trust in the system. Okay, yes, those who have bought insurance, they will actually get back, whatever deposit they have, the big sum of it from the insurance company. So this system, in a way, I find is actually creating the disparity. The rich is getting richer, the poor is getting poorer. Why? If the bank is not willing to finance a younger generation to acquire their wealth through buying a property, basically the house will be bought by the same owner again and again. and the younger generation or the poorer generations will always remain as a tenant. So I think this actually how should I exacerbate the disparity of wealth. They also exacerbate the disparity between the older generation and the younger generation. Okay, in terms of wealth accumulation. So the impact to the bank as a lender, not just whatever I mentioned just now. If you have finance, if you are a bank, you have financed 800,000 for the house, okay, as a mortgage, and subsequently you lend out another 700,000 to the tenant, no, as a loan for the deposit. Okay. Now, some economists in the article say that because from tenant point of view, if things goes well, I can get back the 700,000 deposit from the owner 2 years later. If anything goes wrong, if I purchase the insurance protection, I will be able to get back the shortfall from a third party, right? So that's why the economists say it poses limited risk to the commercial lender or even to the tenant. Okay, this is what it mentioned. Almost all Jeonse loans, I hope I pronounce correctly, Jeonse, if you understand Mandarin, is 传世, right, have guarantee from public enterprise, leaving little credit risk from commercial lenders. Okay, so you say it poses very limited macroeconomic risk. But here I beg to differ a bit, okay, because from tenant perspective, perhaps limited cases, it poses very limited risk. But if this thing go to a much bigger scale, somebody eventually have to foot the bill. And when I'm talking about housing price, the house value in Seoul is so high, so expensive. Therefore, whatever amount shortfall in the deposit is a big amount also. So when you have many people, many landlords are defaulting, not able to pay back to their tenant, it actually creates a systematic risk to the whole economy, finance market in Korea. That will be to the longer term. Whether we will reach that extent, yet to be seen. Okay, so what actually triggered the crisis? There are quite few something that is happened to rest of the world, but there are something also quite unique to the Korean economy market. Of course, for those of you who are taking a housing loan or you have a deposit in some way, because the Central Bank of US, the Federal Reserve, has been aggressively hiking their interest rate since 2022, right? I think almost 5% increment, the deepest, most aggressive rate hike in US history. As you know, when there's an aggressive rate hike, it impacts the stock market, it impacts the property market as a whole. Installment become a lot more expensive, especially if you are on a flexi loan. Willingness to buy a house in a high interest rate environment also drop a lot, right? Instead of paying 3,000, now you need to pay about 4,000, maybe 4,002, just because of the interest rate hike. Maybe then you say, you know what? Maybe I just wait a little bit more when the price, well, when the interest rate will come down. Second reason, slowdown in chips. Chips is a requirement everywhere. Back in COVID period, when there's a movement control in the whole world, production of chips, distribution of chips is actually in acute shortage, right? When things back to normal, things have changed. Factory back to full force, workers coming to work, yet the economy is facing a recession. Supply has gone up a lot. Demand has come down a lot. You will see the prices in chips maker, their revenue suffer a lot. Take Samsung. Nobody never heard of Samsung, right? Even though you are not using any, I'm sure you have heard of Samsung. Samsung being one of the chip makers, their profit has dropped 96%. Can you imagine if you are an income earner, your income dropped 96%? What does it mean to you as a household? Or what does it mean to you as a corporation? Samsung is just not an ordinary enterprise. Samsung is the enterprise. Samsung is the company that is affecting the GDP of the whole Korea. Okay? Samsung to cut chip production as profit plunged by 96%. This is the news is as new as recent as last week. Okay? Now, the question come back to us, Malaysia. I'm sure if you're listening, you'll probably own certain property in Malaysia. And the question you want to ask, will Malaysia suffer the same fate like what's Korea going on now? I think in order to answer that question, I think we need to ask two questions to ourselves. Number one, do we have easy credit, easy credit like other countries? That means that you can basically walk into the bank, you get your loan approved just like that. You can use the same credit system, finance system, to buy 3-4 houses just like a step of a tunnel. Quite unlikely. If you do the proper channel way, I think it's quite unlikely. The second question is, do we enjoy the phenomenal irrational growth in property prices like other countries for the past 10 years? 20% growth in a year, 50% growth in 3 years, double the household prices in 10 years? No, I don't think we. Maybe a very unique specific location, they actually enjoy healthy growth. But you talk about overall Klang Valley, overall Malaysia property prices, right? We have been quite slow going through a COVID. We are quite elastic. So when we did not enjoy this kind of irrational growth, the chances of our property price out crash, like what other countries have been enjoying because of speculations. So the chances of Malaysia property prices crash with others, I think, is relatively low. Okay? And before I end the session today about Korea, just the CPI, or we call inflation data, just came from US. Now, many of us actually come to understand US is probably at the end of their rate hiking cycle. One thing to look for is actually the CPI, Consumer Price Index. Yesterday, our figures was below expectation, right? On month-to-month basis, they are expecting inflation to grow 0.2%, but instead they only grow 0.1%, all right? On a year-on-year basis, they expect inflation to grow 5.2%. Compared to last year, it only grew 5%. So now I think the focus shift from the market is, instead of Federal Reserve is going to keep on increasing the rate, I think the chances quite low, pausing the rate and probably eventual a rate drop by the end of the year. I think now the concern is actually the recession. Aggressive rate hike has impacted many business, especially the technology one, in a big wave. And the result, normally there's a lagging effect. Whatever you do today, the impact can only be felt months or even years later. Okay? So that will be all. Korea and US, you got it all. You got it all at Property Zone Live. Sean Lee here. See you next time. Bye.